I think too, a certain tenacity probably develops when you're a person who's constantly having to navigate new situations. Pretty soon you just kind of get used to, I would imagine, doing new things a lot and just kind of telling yourself, okay, well, this is new. you know, I've got to figure this out. And because what's the alternative? Especially if you're unhoused and you're not sure what the next step is going to be, and you're trying to just figure out how to protect yourself or how to eat today. And I mean, those are like the basic basics.
Welcome to Amy Liz Harrison's podcast, Eternally Amy, a mum of eight's journey from jail to joy. A Gen Xer who overcame her struggle with alcohol to become a best-selling author and mental health advocate. She shares stories of hope and offers ideas for others struggling with mental health challenges, spirituality, ADHD, or maybe just family, travel, and logistics. One thing is for sure, you'll leave with something to chew on. And now, here's your host, Amy Liz Harrison, with your mystery meat sandwich.
Greetings, compadres. Well, coming at you today is the latest Boozeless book club episode, and it is very exciting. If you're watching, here's a flash of it. Flash, flash, flash. I don't know. Anyway, today we're going to have with us three of us. Two of us are here. One will be coming in. And so we're missing Sarah today, Sarah Alemo, but we do have Carolyn Bunn with us. Woot, woot.
Hi.
So there she is. There she is. And also Alysse Bryson. And so Alysse will come in later. Carolyn's here now, and she is my social media manager, my business manager, part therapist, because I always unload stuff on her, and part like all things magical, part magician, because I don't really know how she does it all, but she does. So anyway, super happy to have her here. And so what's cool is we're all friends too. So that's really fun. And for some reason, like it makes me actually want to sing and I won't, but the Silver Spoons intro, I won't, but maybe I will. Here we are, face to face, a couple of silver spoons. Anyways, we are here to get rolling. And then when Alysse pops in, she'll pop in. Here's what we have today. Now I will hold it steadier, and I'll have to flip this because it's backwards. If you're watching, sorry about that. So this is called Hindsight, and I'm going to tell you a little bit about it, and then I'm going to have Carolyn read the blurb. So back in October, Alysse and I went to the 20 Books Vegas conference for authors, and I was asked to speak on the memoir panel. And the moderator was a lady named Dr. Sheryl Recinos. And her memoir, it just sounded so compelling. And I was like, man, I got to read that. And I was lucky enough that she gave me a copy. And then I had the pleasure of interviewing her a couple weeks ago. And here's what's cool. She is we'll link it and all that good stuff. But she's like the most chill, calm person. She's not, sort of one of these, hey, I'm just like a spaz case. I've been through a lot of stuff and I'm totally all over nope. She's just, I'm going to use the word steady. She strikes me as just super steady. And I don't know. I was really impressed with the way that she made me feel at ease. Maybe that's the doctor thing too. I don't know. Anyhow, it's called Hindsight. Coming of age on the streets of Hollywood. And do you not love the font? So if you're listening, you're just going to have to Google it because the font is super dope. It's like a It's like the Hollywood sign kind of font. So very fitting and love it. So anyway, I'm going to turn it over to Carolyn to read the blurb in a second. But yeah, just a note on Sheryl. She's just kind. She's just very, very kind, unassuming, sweet lady. And she's a powerhouse, most importantly, of like inner strength. And you can tell that by what she has been through. So I say that because this ain't fiction, y'all. This is true live story, the MTV True Life, but it's not MTV. And yeah, it's just fascinating. So with that, Carolyn, would you mind reading the blurb for Hindsight?
Yes, absolutely. And by the way, it is coming across as the right side. So I'm reading it correctly. It's not mirrored. So if anybody is listening on the podcast, you should come check us out on YouTube. We're over there as well. Also, because your jacket today is amazing. It's like this cool cropped denim jacket. I don't know how to explain it, but go check it out on YouTube. Anyways, I digress. Sorry.
Love it.
But yes, I'm going to read the little intro blurb from Hindsight from Amazon. And so Hindsight, coming of age on the streets of Hollywood, is a gripping memoir of the teenage years of Sheryl Recinos, MD. She reflects on the journey that changed her life when she was a teen in her debut book. She chronicles her dysfunctional upbringing that led her through foster care, detention, and eventually to the streets of Hollywood. Hindsight gives Sheryl's personal account of the dangers of teen homelessness and shows how she struggles to complete high school and find work living on streets and in shelters. The book reveals the dangerous obstacles that she encountered during her journey, including the murder of a friend and the constant dangers of predators seeking to harm youth on the streets. Her story culminates with her harrowing tale of being a homeless pregnant teen and illustrates how she found hope and made it off the streets. After Sheryl Recinos overcomes homelessness, she later finds success as a physician and continues to give back to the community that saved her. How was that for a summary? It's just absolutely an incredible story. And those are just a few things that came across in the story. But I personally had a really hard time putting this book down because it was just, I really gained a lot of insight in terms of what it is like for people who are disadvantaged youth, and how much harder it is for people in that position, to get ahead, to get access to basic things that I definitely have taken for granted in my life. So it's an incredible story.
I did not actually know anything about teen homelessness, which sounds like a complete privileged white person thing to say, and it is. And I think that Sheryl has like a soft-spoken gift, and it also comes through in her writing, where she's got experience that she can share about what it's like that doesn't come across in the like, well, you idiots should know all this. Like, you should be with it. And like, where have you been kind of thing. It's an educational voice that isn't, it doesn't make you feel badly. It's just kind of like, oh, well, let me show you this or tell you this story. And so I felt that tone came across in her writing as well. It's a big book. Holy cow. And P.S. Here's Alysse. This is the perfect time for me to ask this question, so I'm going to admit her. Hello. Alysse is joining us from the mean streets of Kent.
Auburn.
Oh, my bad.
I'm further south. Seattle traffic. I don't know how. Do you guys know how to navigate traffic now that we're like really out of a pandemic? Because I don't. I forgot how. And I underestimate everything.
Yeah, me too. And I don't check, like, Andrew's really good. My husband's good at like, he'll be like, oh, my ETA is 5:54. And I'm like, you check that every day. You map that just to get home from work. Like, you know how to drive here. But yeah, he does. So I don't know. I guess I'm just not that, I'm not with it like that. Some people are dialed in.
Do you, totally random question. I love to just jump in and just disrupt everything. Do you put the Find Your Phone app on your kids and like track your kids and Andrew?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know if that's normal or not, or shows that I qualify for Al-Anon because I have control issues.
I don't have the Find My iPhone app on Prosh, my boyfriend, but I did put he never would tell me when he's coming home. And so I finally put an air tag in his car. Not because I'm trying to track where he's at, but because I can tell if he's on his way and I need to like really quick like throw things and like make the house look nice so I don't look like a complete total slob when he gets back. Even though he doesn't care either way, but I do.
Okay. So since we're getting sidetracked, we will bring it back around to Hollywood because I'm going to tell a story about traveling. Okay.
Okay. Bring it full circle. Bring it back around.
I will bring it full circle. So we went to New York with, we took our daughters to New York a couple weekends ago, and we left on a Sunday morning for the airport. And we are like, I mean, 8 minutes outside of arriving at JFK to depart for Seattle, you know, and it's not like we were late. We had plenty of time because my husband makes sure of that. We call him Travel Andrew because he's really focused about getting to the airport early. So we're just outside with 8 minutes until we arrive at JFK. And he goes, is my computer bag in the back? So long story short, I turn around. No, it's not there. So we whip around. We go back to town to the Hilton where he's going to attempt to try and go get his bag from God knows where. So it ends up that he has put his computer bag inside his suitcase because he was thinking in his head that he was going to combine bags, but that's not his normal routine. So because it wasn't part of his normal deal, he was all discombobulated and thought he left it somewhere. So then I said gently, perhaps you might consider getting an air tag and putting it in your computer bag. Now, of course, this is after everything had calmed down and the computer bag was fine, right? And he goes, funny thing is, I have an air tag in there, but it's in the box because I haven't opened it and like set it up yet. And I just thought, oh my gosh, that's like a life metaphor for me. Totally understand what you're saying. So we set it up and now it will never happen again. So there it is. But I love that you just came in, Alysse, because I was about to ask my first question, which is a very important one about Hindsight, Sheryl Recinos' memoir. And the very important question I was about to ask is applicable, I think, to you. Not that you watch these kind of shows per se, but I thought you might find it entertaining. Is, did anybody note that chapter 70 is called Jerry Springer? And P.S. Sheryl was on Jerry Springer?
It's not as glamorous as it looks, it sounds like.
Oh, yeah.
Also, they never paid her. They paid her
Nope.
like $200 and they paid her half. They lied, which is like blew my mind.
You know what? This is, I'm sorry to come in and just like jump off on all these different tangents, but did you know that David Hasselhoff makes something like $5,000 or $500, $5,500 every time an episode re-airs, but Pamela Anderson makes like 25 cents or 50 cents? Like it's like that far apart.
Yeah.
I can't even go there.
And she was why people watch that show, not him.
Yeah. Well, and that's just gonna goes to show how, you know, I guess it kind of, even if you want to relate it to the book, like people that have somebody in their corner, somebody in their life that can stand up for them, that has the knowledge and that can say, oh, you deserve to be getting this. This is what your contract should be. You have this, can afford a lawyer, what have you. Versus somebody, like Pamela Anderson, who didn't have maybe a mentor. I can't remember the exact story, but she didn't have somebody that set her up right from the beginning, right?
Right. Yeah.
And I think that really goes to show kind of also in this book how much harder it is for somebody to really, set themselves up for life when they come from like a advantage situation. Like Sheryl was talking about, I've been reading actually her second book, and she's talking about how hard it was in med school because a lot of the people came from families that were doctors and they already kind of had the know-how, they knew how to get there. And versus like where she was coming from, she had to learn all of that from scratch. And I think that's what's so amazing about this book is that she went out and found her own mentors and found, people who would be in her corner. But, I don't think that when I was that age, or even in my 20s or even in my early 30s, that I would have had the wherewithal to go, I need to have this person in my corner and somebody looking out for me. And I need to figure out the path that I want because I just didn't know, and I think I just admire so much of that in her.
Well, and I don't know about both of you, but like I got almost 17 years doing this sober thing, and I still sometimes trouble advocating for myself and speaking up for what I think is right for me or what I think is right for the situation. I still struggle with that. I've gotten better. I've definitely lots of improvement, but lots more improvement available for the taking.
Yeah. Agreed. And to have to do that at such a young age too, where, and I'd have a tendency to like spoil books that I review too, because I like give away too much information. But at one point she does get pregnant. And so to have to navigate life when I was pregnant, all those times, like half my brain was gone. So to have all these other factors, being a part of trying to figure out how to, navigate all these changes and navigate the world that you're currently living in. And I mean, difficult. And also just the internal kind of thoughts that would go through one's head, like, this isn't exactly what I planned in terms of having a kid. I mean, this is not what I expected. What did you guys think stuck out to you? Like, what were kind of the emotions that you guys went through? Because I was like this, woo, up and down.
Yeah, I definitely felt the same way. I think I felt like she's just such an excellent writer. And I felt like I was like there in the moment and I could feel, I mean, I can't even imagine firsthand what she went through, but she did a great job of describing what she was going through. And a lot of it was constant of feeling hopeful and then feeling like somebody just knocked her down again. And she kept getting setback after setback in life. And just one of the things that I really admired about her was just the way that she was she just kept going, in life. Like she persisted and didn't give up on herself, despite the fact that she was surrounded by so many situations and so many people that she could have easily said, oh, I'm just giving up. I'm going to, give into alcohol abuse or drug abuse. And she saw in herself that there was a greater person inside of herself and that she could find a path to get there, despite it being really challenging. So it definitely made me take an introspective look on my life and think, wow, if she can do all of that. I mean, there's a lot of things that I've felt in life. Well, I don't know if I can do this or that. And especially when it comes to, starting new things, starting a business, whatever, and realizing that it's not as nearly as difficult as some of the things that she went through.
For sure.
I think everything that you both said, and my story is wildly different than hers, but there's a lot of parallels, right? I was a young single mom and I dropped out of college and I had to fight for everything that I got professionally. And being a person in sales and marketing, some creepy stuff happens over deals, right? Like to young girls. And there was a lot of drama in my life in my 20s, which kind of gave me the Jerry Springer vibes, you know? So there was, yes, there was the up and downs, but just I drew a lot of parallels.
Definitely hit the nail on the head of just like the especially being younger and the predators that are out there and the things that she went through. I mean, some of them were pretty severe, but that's really, really hard, especially for women, especially for women.
Yeah. I look back now and been like, how could you have let that person talk that way to you or put you in that position or those certain things happened because they were in a position of power, right? Definitely in a position of power, especially to a single mom who was paycheck to paycheck. Like I look back now and I can't believe that I let like that I was in some of those situations, some of those things happened. But then like, but also I can give myself just some grace. Like why would you have thought you could have handled anything different at that age with your level of maturity, right? You just, yeah. And well, and hindsight is 2020. See a lot clearly when you look back versus in the moment or even looking forward.
I want to talk about like fear for a second because I can count on like one hand the amount of times I have ridden a bus in my life, a Greyhound bus. Certainly in today's world, like going downtown to Seattle, like you couldn't pay me to do that. I have done that before in the past. I did it a couple times, like to a Seahawks game. And that felt totally fine to me. But now it does not feel fine. And I feel really vulnerable if I were to, like when I consider doing that, it's just kind of like, no, thanks. And I can't imagine, they have some of those programs where you can, spend a night on the street and see what it's like kind of thing. And like hard pass on that. And I can't imagine what it is really like. And I think, especially you guys brought up women and especially as a woman, like I don't like walking to my car in a church parking lot after an AA meeting at this one particular church because the light is really dim and the parking lot is super dark and it's surrounded by woods. So, yeah, I just don't know. I just think that fear, I know, makes me do crazy things. Like I'll start, imagining all sorts of terrifying outcomes. And I think her drive to get educated and to learn. And I mean, I wonder if you just have to because fear would be a daily occurrence, right? And so do you just kind of have to imagine that possibly things could get different someday. And so if that were to happen, maybe these are the steps I might take, or this is the step I might take that's next. And do you just kind of divert your attention from the fear? Like, I don't know.
I mean, what's coming up for me though is, and it's interesting that we're talking about this because I just left downtown Seattle and was commuting with someone and we were talking about the fact that we are both very relieved and grateful that we do not have to take public transportation. And because we saw a very pretty girl sitting at the bus stop and some kind of creepy people around her. And we drove past her and nothing bad was happening, but it made me uncomfortable just driving past it. So we were actually just having this conversation. And, it's a place of privilege to not have to take the public transportation. Privilege right. That I don't have to do. But I do think that if you don't know any better, and that is a very normal everyday occurrence to you, and it's all you've ever known, I don't know that fear is necessarily there because it's normal, right? So does that make sense?
Yep.
But I too don't want to take public transportation if I don't have to, in part because I'm just lazy, and I just want to leave at the last minute I can and be able to leave at the first minute I want to. But in part because I don't I don't like all the unknowns of that environment because I don't feel like I'm in control, quite honestly. And I don't like the feeling of not being in control.
Right.
I just hate traffic, so I take the light rail all the time.
No, now light, yeah. I mean, but
Good.
it's interesting you said that because, um, Kate, that writes for the Sober Curator, just went back to New York and to do a fashion show, for the Break Free fashion show. And I wasn't with her this time. That was her second time going to New York. Last year I went with her. And so we were able to navigate around the subways because my sister's lived there long enough and I've done it long enough now that I've got the right app, and sometimes I still get going the wrong direction. That definitely happens. But I have been asked for directions in New York. So I'm like, oh my God, they think I live here. Um, but she told me this time, like, she had like $1,000 in Uber, in Uber and taxis, because she was too scared to try to go below ground herself. And I understood that, because the first time I went to New York, way back when, I was like, there's no way I can do it. There's no way I can do it. Right. But once I learned it and realized that, I mean, that I was mostly safe. I'm not saying I don't know. Like, I definitely saw some things. And unfortunately, I even got food poisoning and threw up on a subway car. So that was super embarrassing. But I think that public transportation is maybe more scary or fearful, bringing up fear to people that aren't in that environment on the regular, versus people that it's part of their every daily commute. Like, it's part of their routine. They know how to kind of have their wits about them. They have, they kind of know what to look for when something's out of place. I don't know.
Yeah, I think it's just like anything in life where if you haven't done it a lot, it's scary. And like there's a lot of people where like travel is scary, or there's just different aspects. And I think for somebody maybe like Sheryl, just been through so many different things, it seems like she's faced a lot of her fears probably out of necessity. And I think there's definitely something to be said about people that face a lot of their fears, and if they can do that, they can probably, go very far like she has, because she's like, hey, I've already done all this other hard stuff. What's this other hard thing?
The only other thing I was going to say about fear is we have to remember that fear is in our DNA. It's in our code. It's part of our our lizard brain. Like, we need to have it to survive. So when you put it in those terms and you remember that it's part of what it is to be a human, and that it is to our advantage sometimes to have fear, fear of heights from falling over, fear of a hot stove from getting burnt, like, it's there for a reason, to protect us in a lot of cases. When somebody explained that to me, I was like, oh, for some reason that took some of the fear out of the fear, if that made sense. It's just not letting the fear overtake you in areas that it's not necessary.
I think too, a certain tenacity probably develops when you're a person who's constantly having to navigate new situations, and pretty soon you just kind of get used to, I would imagine, doing new things a lot, and just kind of telling yourself, okay, well, this is new, I've got to figure this out. And because what's the alternative? Especially if you're unhoused and you're not sure what the next step is going to be, and you're trying to just figure out how to protect yourself or how to eat today. And I mean, those are like the basics. I don't know. I mean, this book actually, you guys have seen The Pursuit of Happiness? It reminded me a lot of that. Just not giving up and just having that I'm going to figure this out kind of mentality. And I don't know, just her mom and the bipolar, and then her relationship with her dad and all those complexities. I think, when it's actually better to sort of, or not better, but maybe preferable to choose the option of facing your fears, as opposed to going and dealing with what you've already been through in your home environment, which wasn't great. That shows a little bit of like, well, I'm going to just like put my nose to the grindstone and like figure out how to do this. And it's something that I admire. And I feel like as I've aged, I've really let a lot of fears overtake me that I didn't used to have when I was younger. And I find that interesting. I don't know if it's because I'm a mom or if it's because I've had scary things happen to me now. Like I just have more life experience. But I mean, I remember just being very like, well, like, let's go to downtown LA, in the middle of the night and we'll go to Tops and we'll get burgers and we'll, this and that. And then we'll roll by, El Segundo and like, stop at a Walgreens. Like, I mean, things that I wouldn't do today. So it's just an interesting, as you live and you collect experiences, right? Just what gets different. I don't know.
Well, and I can only speak for myself, but when I was full of alcohol and drugs, I seemed to have no fear, right? I seemed to put myself in a lot of sketchy situations because I had no fear. Because I wasn't even thinking about it because I was just like usually obliterated. But I'm constantly like, especially when I'm driving, like thoughts will just roll into my head and I'll just get flashbacks of places that I ended up. And I'm like, how? How did you end up there? You know?
Yeah, I thought it was interesting and admirable because she does talk a little bit in the book about struggling with alcoholism, but I think she was like between 17 or 19. She's very young, but yet mature enough to realize that she thought she was kind of starting to have a problem with drinking. And I think, we talk a lot about on this podcast, like sobriety and drinking, because we all have that as our underlying thing that we have in common. But it was just really admirable to me that one, because, drinking can stem from a lot of things. And usually it's because you're trying to compensate for something else, right? And I can imagine being in that type of situation, you would easily use that as a reason to drink or use drugs or you have an alternate state of mind because it's already very difficult. But for her to recognize that drinking wasn't going to help her get out of that situation and start attending meetings at such a young age, I just thought was really incredible for her to recognize that so young.
I am always blown away when I see someone so young trying to get sober. But then my heart also breaks a little bit because I know how broken you have to be, at least for me, to realize I needed to make different choices and get help because I was not able to do it on my own. So then I also get sad that someone feels that broken that early on in life too. Um, but I'm always so impressed when I see someone even trying, even if it's there's a lot of failures. I don't know. I guess you're done when you're done.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's interesting. I don't know. I sort of got sober at sort of a mid-range of life, I guess. I don't know. I really didn't spend that much time drinking. If you look at my life on the whole, I just kind of got right in there and, progressed and did it right, like right in all the wrong ways. And when I was in rehab, I met a lady who was much older than I was. She was in her late 70s. And, you got this weird, like, paradox of like this room full of mostly young people. And by that, I mean like, south of age 25. And then you've got this lady, Jo, and she was much older. And then you got a couple of us in the middle. But, the younger ones kept saying, well, I just wish I hadn't messed this up. I'm having to get sober so young and all this. And then she was like, basically, hey, gang, I really effed up my whole life, and so be glad you're getting this now. So it's just an interesting perspective, the two different camps, it's never a bad choice to, get sober and decide that you're going to leave like some behaviors that don't serve you well behind, right? So, and I think especially if you're living on the street or it just makes you, able to have some faculties about you. And so I'm sure that was, a welcome ability that she had to be able to kind of, have her wits about her. I think one thing that struck me too was, so she ends up, as I mentioned, she gets pregnant and she's got kids. And I wonder, having come from a not great home life, how it feels to get that mama bear instinct when you're just like, oh, I'm not going to let these things happen to you that happened to me, and just have that protective kind of instinct kick in. As I was moved by how much she was all about her kids. And she was mentioning in the interview, which you should listen to because she does a much better way of explaining this. But, she like has this really sweet relationship with them. And I'm not going to cry, but it was touching to me. It was very moving because I think some people just they have a better appreciation for life and for where they are now. And for their kids, it's like, I know my kids were like this with my story. It's like, Mom, it doesn't even sound like you. Like, what? Because you do think of that person as another person because they kind of were. I'm fascinated to read her second book. Sounds kind of amazing. So I need to do that. But what I was thinking of doing as we wrap up is just ending on strength, the concept of strength. And, it's funny because the times like when I went through all my heart stuff, for example, and I almost died a few years ago because I got this infection and I had basically heart failure and I had to have an internal cardiac defibrillator implanted and all this stuff. And I basically found out that I was at a really low ejection fraction, one that actually doesn't even make sense to me, but it was a 7% ejection fraction, which is really ridiculous that I'm alive right now. But people kept saying, oh, you're so strong. Like when I kind of was getting back to volunteering a little bit at the school and all this, I don't know how you did that. You're so strong. And you kind of want to say like, I don't have a choice. I'm not strong at all. I don't love this. Like, are you saying, what are you saying? It just always struck me as weird. I couldn't really respond to that well because I wasn't sure what they were actually saying. It's not like I chose this. And so I loved, and I just kind of thought this was a cool way to, and she had a couple just really short but powerful quotes on strength that I liked when she said, my strength failed, but my inner fight continued. And I think that is like, that's the whole thing, right? It's the whole inner strength that sometimes keeps us going when our physical strength isn't there. And I definitely related to that with my heart stuff. Was like, they were trying to tell me, for example, that I couldn't take my psychiatrist prescription. And I obeyed those orders for a little while. And then I just said, my mental health comes first before my physical health. And I just knew that I had to get back to meetings. I had to be taking my meds. I had to get out of I'm a sick person mode because I knew that was ultimately just going to be my demise, because I would just kind of fall into that and like this kind of, oh, take care of me and oh, I'm on my deathbed. And it's like, no, I have today. And so because I have today, I'm going to live, and I'm going to live like I really need to, live while taking care of my body as much as I needed to physically, right? And resting and blah. And then she also said I was stronger than I looked, stronger than I ever even knew. And like, kind of just think that's sort of a drop mic moment because, yeah, a lot of times we don't know how strong we are. And looking back on a situation, hence the title, Hindsight, then you kind of go, I know that was me, but wow, was that really me? Yep, that was me. Because so much has changed and because you've survived so much and sort of championed a whole new life. So anyway, I don't know if you guys had any closing thoughts or comments.
I would say The second book is amazing. It's really great. And it talks about her journey to becoming a doctor. And personally, I really liked the second book as well, because it parallels a lot of what my boyfriend went through in med school. Not nearly the same in terms of, how hard she had to work versus him, but going to the med school that she went to and just becoming a doctor is already incredibly hard, but becoming a doctor when you're, trying to go back and forth on student loans, and one student loan is about to run out, so she has to take classes just so that she doesn't have to start making payments on the other student loan. And, her kids are, surviving on their whole family surviving on peanut butter and jelly sandwiches, at some points. And it's a great story. So if you have read this one, the second one is great as well.
Do you think the second one's better than the first one?
I think they're both well-written books.
Mm-hmm.
I think I liked the second one just because knowing what she went through in the first one, I kind of think when I was reading the first one, I really wanted to get to that second part of like, how does she get out of this? How does she overcome this? And so I think that's why I liked the second book more a little bit. But, I think you have to read the first book to understand the second.
Yeah, totally get that.
All right. Well, on that note, Sheryl Recinos is an overcomer. That's for sure. And next month, Carolyn, do you mind just telling us the title again? Because I've got the name in my mind. It's Thomas F. something, and I can't remember what the name of his book was either.
Yes.
So prepared, people.
If anybody wants to read along with us. So by the way, Sheryl will be on Amy's show next week. So stay tuned for that interview. I can't wait to listen to it, Amy. And then for next month, if anybody wants to read along or listen along, it is That's What Junkies Do by Thomas Figlioli. And just in a brief summary, it's a brutally honest, often dark journey of one man's struggle with alcoholism and drug addiction. The story takes place in 1980s Brooklyn with a young boy making a bad choice so he can gain the respect of a group of kids. So it talks about how his journey there, and I'm looking forward to reading it and talking about it with you guys.
Yeah, that sounds like a good one.
Cannot wait. All right. As always, thank you so much for your time. Don't forget to be kind and rewind and take what you like and leave the rest behind.
Thank you so much for listening to Eternally Amy. Amy Liz Harrison is a best-selling author, speaker, 12-step coach, meditation teacher, and recovery advocate. To find out more, please visit amylizharrison.com. Keep up with Amy on all platforms by following @AmyLizHarrison. Please subscribe and review this podcast. It means so much to us if you do.